Our third installment of this show within a year is here, and it's safe to say that this one was most certainly as eventful as the previous two seasons. Finishing with the life and origin of Miss Chalice and the souls of Cuphead and Mugman being at stake, the risks were certainly high. With the lack of bosses being felt this season, along with the Devil's Casino making its first inclusion in the show as well, taken from the game, I thought I'd break down every episode of Season 3 and review them all. So let's get into it. Here is the Cuphead Show Season 3 every episode breakdown and review. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Season 3 of the show picked itself up directly after the final shot of Season 2, where we left off with the devil taking Mugman due to Cuphead holding on to the devil's pitchfork and not giving it back. So let's jump straight into Season 3. Episode 1, The Devil's Revenge. The Devil's Revenge focused mainly on Cuphead looking for a way to be able to retrieve Mugman from hell where he was being kept. I thought this episode contained some funny moments within it, such as Mugman not really minding being kept there because he knew that he was going to escape, along with the prisoner letting out a scream whenever he would be spoken to. We didn't get any other bosses or characters feature in this episode other than Quadratus, who made its first and only appearance in this season, mirroring the behaviour that it exhibits in the game, giving good advice. We saw a good climax to the episode following on from Cuphead arriving in hell, with the devil transforming, losing souls, and the brothers being tricked into thinking that they could escape when they couldn't. We saw them make a deal to exchange Mugman for the pitchfork, and the pair returned back to normal life, only for Cuphead to risk it all whilst playing Soul Ball, so it did finish with a laugh. Episode 2, Don't Answer the Door. This episode was a very contained episode, and it featured the bear that we saw in Season 1 of the show, where they were fighting it. We were led to believe that Baby Bottle, a character that we were familiar with in the previous seasons, had returned, and was going to cause a lot of trouble, as it did in the past. However, it was a prank that Elder Kettle played on the boys. The repeat comedy in this episode was something that did make me laugh, such as when Cuphead was going to make the move during checkers and he kept repeating his lack of decision. All the while you could see Mugman thinking about what was outside of the door. With the bear taking the milk, it was revealed to us that it wasn't actually Baby Bottle that was there, but the baby did arrive at the end and caused trouble for the bear. It wasn't my favourite episode, but was certainly a more intimate, contained episode where the comedy was the main focus. There was a small reference to the game in this one as well, where they spoke about fingertip bullets, and that it was possible somewhere out there, which shows that it's something that will most likely never be possible within the Cuphead show, only in the game. Episode 3, Cupstaged. Sally Stageplay returned in this episode, and sadly she was really one of the only bosses from the game that had a main appearance in this season of the show. However, she did have a larger role than her appearance in Season 2, which was good to see. This episode wasn't that important to the development of the plot. It was mainly focused around the Devil, Cuphead, and Mugman all auditioning for the same role, which was Cup Rogers, but they were all destined to fail due to the fact that Sally Stageplay was always going to be playing the several roles because she's obsessed with the theatre. The funniest part in this episode was the focus on Mugman's stage fright, his way of getting around it, and also his backstage fright right at the end of the episode. Episode 4, Roadkill. Roadkill was an episode that I thought was quite good and embodied what's good about the show. We had the devil who was in a position where he'd been letting his work slide and he hadn't collected a soul in a long while, so all of his assets were essentially being seized and kept in a bubble until he collected one. He had one day to collect any soul, otherwise he'd lose everything forever, and of course he decided to go for the most difficult one, which was Cuphead. We saw the devil get hit by Elder Kettle. He presumed it was a cat, and then the devil was in disguise, so he'd wait for the brothers to return home. However, it was here where we saw the devil loving life, and I thought it was rather amusing when this was happening. The only thing that did confuse me in this episode was when Miss Chalice arrived and the devil didn't recognize her there, but he did later on down the line, so I was a bit confused why the dots didn't connect there. We saw the devil not claim Cuphead's soul because he left to watch a movie. He didn't claim Elder Kettle's soul either due to appreciating his kindness, so we saw him claim a random door salesman's in order to allow everything to be okay in hell. Episode 5, Holiday Treedition. This was the shortest episode of the season, and it didn't really play a larger role in the wider story. It was mainly focused on Cuphead and Mugman picking out a tree for Christmas. Porkrind had some great moments in this episode when it came to the haggling of the price and the upping of it due to the cheekiness of the brothers. His voice really suited the style of comedy, the lines, and the delivery. We saw the pair buy an axe and find their own tree, where they went through a lot of trouble keeping it intact, only for it to get burnt to a crisp in the closing moments of the episode. It was a good episode, but there wasn't a lot to take away from it. Porkrind was definitely the highlight. Episode 6, A Very Devil Christmas. This episode was the Cuphead Show's take on a Christmas special, and I thought it was a good one. It mainly centered around the devil and was the longest episode in this season of the show, coming in at over 30 minutes long. It focused on the devil wanting a present for Christmas but not being on the nice list, and needing to do a good deed in order to get on there. However, with the devil being the way that he is, it didn't last 10 seconds. So instead, we saw a ritual take place where the devil turned into Santa and had to deliver all of the presents around the world by midnight in order to get on the nice list and return to his true form. He did this even going through his toughest test, which was being nice to Cuphead and handing over the choo-choo. He did this with the hopes of getting on the nice list and getting his own choo-choo. We saw the devil go on a journey and make it onto the nice list at the end by carrying it out. However, although he returned to his true form, we saw that he got something which Santa deemed to be far greater than a choo-choo, and that was the joy of being nice. Obviously, the devil didn't like that and was annoyed and went back to hell disregarding everything. But in the closing moments of the episode, we saw that the devil had a larger choo-choo that was in the store, and it was Henchman that made it for him, showing the true care and friendship that lies between the pair. It was a nice moment. This was a good episode. It branched the world out a little more, got a small inclusion of Bowl Boy and a character called Sammy Sandwich, but I wouldn't say that it was my favourite. I think the length of it went against it ever so slightly. Episode 7, Special Delivery. This episode of the show was exactly what was needed after the Christmas special, something light, humorous, and a feature that tied back into the overarching story of the entire season, which we saw at the end. We saw Jerry make an appearance and deliver a package to Porkrind where he stated that it needed to be taken to Ribby. After him being knocked out by Cuphead's ball, Cuphead, Mugman, and Miss Chalice had to deliver some exploding shoes to Ribby and Croaks in order to get their ball back. This episode contains some silly humour and Mugman's over-the-top nature due to his love of performing, which was something that was great to see in the character. Plus, we got our first feature of Ribby and Croaks since season 1 of the show. They were one of only a few bosses this season, so it was good to spend time with them. Porkrind in this episode again was a standout. We saw the safety of the three of them and the responsibility that he would hold if something were to happen to them playing on his mind. But in the end, after retrieving the package, it came at the cost of his own shop. Right at the end of this episode, it was where we saw the devil notice Miss Chalice and look to recruit her as part of his plan. Episode 8, Down and Out. King Dice was the main focus of this episode, and we saw him being down on his luck and in ruin following the closing down of his club. The club that we saw had extreme popularity in season 1 of the show. Cuphead approached him and offered to be his manager to arrange his comeback, which he successfully did. However, with the devil and Henchman arriving there, the devil approached King Dice and continued on from where things left off at the end of season 2, where he failed miserably at assisting him in getting Cuphead's soul. We saw King Dice draw up a contract to get Cuphead to sign his soul over to the devil, disguising it as a managerial contract. But as it was about to happen, Cuphead ripped it up because comedy was now in and singing was out, saying that it was just showbiz. We needed a light episode like this after the Christmas special, but I didn't feel that it really connected to the wider plot. The main takeaway from it was that we saw King Dice was now back working with the devil. Episode 9, Joyride. This was our first feature of Miss Chalice rather than a small snippet, and we saw her using her ghost ability to possess people and have a full day of fun with the brothers. There were elements that tied into the first season, such as the singing in the opticians where they first met, which showed the origin of where their relationship formed. The main takeaway from this episode was when they did their fortunes at the end. We saw that Miss Chalice had a card with the devil's face on it, showing that they were connected from the past, something we didn't know before this. And in the closing moments, we saw Henchman arrive and take her to the devil. I thought this episode was a good one. It was short but contained bursts of everything that the show embodies. Fun. There was always something suspicious about Miss Chalice that we never truly knew in the show, but her connection with the devil was something that I was looking forward to seeing. Episode 10, Dance with Danger. Now this was different for the show. It was an origin story episode, something we hadn't seen before. We learnt that Miss Chalice was an orphan when she was younger, and she was punished for discovering her ability to dance and sing, so much so that she managed to escape, and it was being on the streets and busking that enabled her to work on her abilities, make money, and realize that charming people was the best way to survive. She did this until she got hit by a car and ended up dying when she was on her way up. This is what led her to the gates of hell where she met the devil. They made a deal. She could return to the real world as a ghost but be in her true form as and when she pleased, but it meant that she would owe the devil a deal that he could cash in at any time, something which based on episode 9 and also his inclusion in episode 7, he now wanted to cash in. This episode was on the timeline of season 1 where we saw her enter the opticians for the first time where she was singing where Cuphead and Mugman first encountered her, so the flashback was extremely beneficial to us, knowing what she went through before she walked into the opticians. However, once we got back to real time, we saw that the devil wanted to cash in his favor and use her in order to get Cuphead and Mugman's souls. This episode was a good one, learning about the origin of the character, seeing why she has her abilities, but also mixing up the timelines was good to see. It wasn't a particularly funny episode, but was valuable to the universe. Episode 11, The Devil and Miss Chalice. The season finale to the shortest season that we've had of the Cuphead Show. We saw Miss Chalice planning to carry out the devil's favor, but we saw as she was going to get Cuphead and Mugman to sign the contract to deliver their souls to the devil, she couldn't do it. She cared too much about them. They were the only people she'd ever truly cared for, and her conscience got the better of her. This then meant that there was a new deal being made, a dance contest to see who was the better dancer out of Miss Chalice and the devil. The clapometer returned again from a previous season and was going to decide who won. If Miss Chalice won, then the favor would be lost, but if the devil did, then he claimed her there and then. We saw a large audience gather which contained the likes of Bowlboy, who made some small background appearances this season, and also the Root Pack, their first inclusion since season 1. Miss Chalice was winning the contest until the marbles that Cuphead gave her as a gift fell out of her pocket and caused her to slip, making her lose. As the devil was about to take her, we saw Cuphead strike up a new deal. He'd face him in a game, and if he won, then there'd be no favors, but if he lost, then he would have Cuphead and Mugman's soul, and he could take Miss Chalice to hell. I thought the game that was chosen was typical for Cuphead, and that was rock, paper, scissors, a game where he only had a 50-50 chance of winning, and luckily he won comfortably, about 7 times in fact, gambling every time even though he was comfortably winning. This was a subtle tie into what happened at the end. After the devil left, with Cuphead being paraded as a hero, we cut to 1 month later where we saw something from the game make an appearance, the Devil's Casino. We saw Cuphead run off and it looks as though he's going to be betting his soul on several occasions, most likely causing the group to get into even more trouble and more deals with the devil to be made. This was a good season finale. It didn't set up a new season as well as the first and second, but I would think that it's safe to say that a season 4 is on the cards. At least I hope so. I thought season 3 was pretty good. I don't think it's my favourite out of the 3. I think I preferred season 2 of the show. There were so many more iconic bosses, and I think I preferred the overarching story. I appreciated the origin story of Miss Chalice in this season, and the more light-hearted approach to the episodes, but the absence of other bosses was certainly felt. They set up Hildeberg in season 2, and I thought she was going to get a feature in this season, but maybe we'll just have to wait and see if she appears in season 4. As per usual, I was laughing a lot at the behaviour, jokes, and visual exaggeration of some of the animation. This season, whilst I don't think it's better than season 2, it's still definitely worth a watch because it will have you laughing out loud on multiple occasions. So, there you have it, the Cuphead Show Season 3 every episode breakdown and review. If you want to see more videos on the Cuphead Show such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of Season 3? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.